Doing a series of alternate history, and we'll be continuing. What if Europe? Well, what if civilization started in Europe? So basically, I did this with one of Azores instead of Europe. That series is kind of almost over, reaching the modern day. We'll probably do a season two of it. So the series is not over, but the first season is. But this newer series is pretty interesting because it's Europe, and all civilizations started from the Netherlands. Yes, all civilizations started from the Netherlands and the French area, and also northern Germany, and spread out. The Roman Empire wants to expand again, and of course, they're gonna pick on the weakest country in the world, this country. Actually, it's the second. It's the weakest country in the entire world. Even the Estonian and Swedish countries are stronger. They defeat this very weak country, and they just capture the capital, and it's so over for this country. They are done. This country was pretty old too. But unlike in the Asia one, where the Asian countries are kind of more peaceful, the Europeans don't mess around. Okay, they don't mess around. Also, Rome, along with Spain, explore more of the northern Sahara Desert and North Africa as well. Okay, we gotta use a smaller 7 pixels makes sense. They explore more of this coastal area here, so Morocco has been discovered. Spain Spain, takes some land, and this is the next big rivalry. It's between the Spanish country and the Roman country. The Roman country, they expand towards here, and they expand towards northern Libya, towards parts of Libya, and parts of Tunisia, and actually I think it's small part of Libya, but mostly Algeria here. And of course, there's another war. It's between the Turkish country, or Anatolian country, and the Egyptian country. And this is basically because they border each other and they have a massive border dispute. And the Egyptians send troops in. And the Anatolians don't really know, because this is like very rural and underpopulated areas. The problem with the Anatolian countries, they haven't really developed this region. This region, if you look at the population density of here, most of the population lives here, and yeah, this is a pretty bad sign for the Anatolian country, because Egyptian country is like that too, but the Egyptians were preparing for this. They were gonna invade Turkey first. Actually, we're gonna use a different color. And yeah, basically they control this area. This actually takes weeks to control still, considering the fact that this is, very rugged terrain, and we're not using tanks or anything, we're using this infantry. But it is pretty bad, because the Anatolian country, they are kind of struggling in the war. They do manage to take parts of Lebanon here. They have seceded in, however, actually they haven't done anything. The Anatolians start to manage to actually invade here. Because most of this Egyptian country's military is mostly based in this front line, they actually have to split the front line in two, which is pretty bad. And the Egyptian country, they have more people, but they have war strategies. So the Anatolians actually push back this huge front line, and they actually trap these troops here. This is pretty bad for the Egyptians. Even though the Egyptians have been here longer, but the Egyptians, like in real life, have never been, they were one of the first civilizations, but kind of like in real life, the Egyptians, they kind of struggle. The Anatolians are destroying the Egyptians in military combat. Okay, it was a surprise attack, but they also now push back to this lake here, and they now surround these two areas here. And this is a pretty bad sign for the Egyptians, as this is the front line. So the Egyptians call back all troops, basically. And now the whole goal is to prevent, because they're now reaching into Israel and Palestine, this region here, and this is pretty bad because they're cutting off these rural areas which are being invaded relatively quickly here. Here, as most of this area is like with the Anatolia, has very low population density because of the environment, because of the climate, which is pretty bad for the Egyptian army. But the Egyptians do get to sit together and they start to push back. So the Egyptians start to push their entire army up northward to actually be able to starve off this invasion. They also cut this area off and this area off here, and the Egyptians have many military victories. So this war has been going on for basically 20 years at this point. Okay, the Anatolians have been able to invade several areas. Meanwhile, the world just watches because these two countries are competing for the number 2 spot. Okay, these are the number 2 and number 3 countries in the world. Okay, with number 1 being the Roman country, number 4 being Hispaniola or Spain, basically. Not Hispaniola. Hispaniola is these islands, yes. But Spain, basically. Oh yeah, Iberia. That's the continent. That's the region is called Iberia. Okay. Yeah, but they are doing pretty well, but yeah, these two countries, like the number 2, number 3, number 4, I think would be the French country as well. But they're struggling military, despite this country, despite the Egyptian, despite the Anatolian country, basically being weaker. They are having pretty good military victories, but the problem is they're mostly winning in the rural areas. These are areas that are not very well defended. And the Egyptians start to actually take these areas back over time. They start to take back this area over time. And basically, over another 3 years, they managed to take this area back. And the Egyptians start a full-scale invasion of... But things continue to get worse for the Anatolians, because the Egyptians are now finally starting to invade their territory again. But the Greeks, the Egyptians said, hey, if you want more land, join this war. Okay? Because the Greeks are the only other country that can really intervene in this war. And of course the Greeks chose the side. So tons of Greek soldiers start to come in, and start to invade northern Anatolia, and also parts of the south as well, cutting off this rural area right here, and getting towards the capital. Okay. Meanwhile, Egypt as well starts to invade this little area right here, and things just get worse for the Anatolian country as Azerbaijan, which is this like purplish color, I think here. Basically, they say, hey, we don't want to be a part of your country, but this area right here, this area has like no people, but they said we had enough. We had enough of these, people over here. So basically, this is Azerbaijan, Caucasus. We might give this a unique country name. We'll be calling it Caucasus for now. But the peoples here, despite very, very far few between, they rebel. Okay, they rebel and they say no. We want no more of this bullshit by the Anatolian Empire. And yeah, this country was on its way to becoming one of the top superpowers of the world. But looks like that's not happening. And the capital is completely surrounded by Greek forces, while the Egyptians start to basically, take here. The Anatolians also lose this land here, and the Egyptians conquer this, take over this land, and the Anatolians are basically just stuck to mostly rural areas at this point, and the government and the king is killed, which basically causes the government collapse. So we have a collapsed government on the way here, which means the Anatolian government is not part of the peace deal. Yeah, because the government collapsed. Yeah. Because almost every country has a king or a dictator. Basically, there was no interview between. The country collapsed. Yeah, we're going to be waving the areas blank here. So the Greeks, they will be gaining all of this land here. That's what the Greeks will get. The Egyptians will gain control over this area. However, because the peoples over here helped, okay, as well. However, the king's son, which was actually spared, actually flees to Georgia because this is the Caucasian peoples. However, the king's son flees towards Georgia, the country. Yeah, and they flee towards here, which means we'll be calling this basically as Anatolia, basically the Anatolia country, because this is the same country basically. They flee here, and this country right here, the capital will be right around here, and we have two new countries over here. They're pretty weak, so they're not gonna pose any threats. But Egypt is clearly the number 2 power in the world, and now Anatolia has been replaced by Greece. However, a new landmass has been discovered. A group of Egyptian sailors settled across India, and this is the first contact between this land. So the Egyptians, which were, mostly Greeks moving to Egypt, so basically the Greeks formed, because Greeks formed first, and then some sailors from Greek and Rome formed Egypt, but now they have settled in an unfamiliar landmass, and that is India. And there's no people here because civilization started. But however, this is like an Indian team. Oh yeah, this Indian country here, the brown country here, they form, and basically the sky becomes the new king, and they see a land full of resources over here. That's the Indian country right there. However, the Roman country wants to take even more land. They want to basically become a real empire. They saw what happened to Anatolia, and they don't want to see what happened to Anatolia. Okay, so there's several countries they can attack. It's not really wise, but they should take out the rival countries first. So which country should they take out first? Should they take out Croatia, or should they take out Anatolia to finally gain control over to gain access towards trade towards England, which doesn't really matter because they also have France, so they can. But again, Croatia is actually, at least for now, more influential for trade, as there isn't really much of a reason to have this little canal right here. Unless they start denying them trade, they can of course just go up here and do it, But they want to have eventual domination of the Mediterranean. So they can't take on Egypt, which is the number 2 power in the world, whereas they're the number 1 power. However, they can still take on the number 3 power and the number 4 power, and of course the number 5 power. Okay, so Rome decides to invade the weaker of its neighbors. They don't invade the Alpine countries, as even like Rome sees these two countries as like a massive waste of time. So the Romans, they start to invade Croatia. Yeah, considering the fact that this war took so long, this isn't too surprising. The Romans want to expand. They want to regain. Basically, they're the equivalent of like the Adiz Pros series of the old empire, such as the Red Team. Even though the civilization started here, this is kind of like the core. And they start to invade many of the coastal regions. The Croatian army, like they even invade the capital. They moved the capital further up north to here. The kings were notified like a day before, so they moved here. The capital is now over here, out of the way. But the Croatian army is like being destroyed, okay? Yeah, they take the capital here, and they take most of the populated centers. Okay. It's mostly left of like rural areas right here, and they're now at the border of Greece. And Greece sees this opportunity to say, hey, let's screw over another country and start invading them as well. So even the Greeks are helping them, the Romans. they want more land, so they start to invade basically like Serbia and North Macedonia without a modern day equivalent. So Greece starts to invade here, and they say, hey, we can take this land too. We can take as much land as we want to. And the Croatians, which they weren't going to survive. Let's just be honest here. They weren't going to survive, but the Croatians, are basically screwed. And then another country gets in, which is this Polish country. They want a piece of the pie. They start to invade the southern portion to basically, hey, create a buffer zone. They start to, and the Croatians are basically like, what the fuck? What the fuck is wrong with you guys? Um, you guys are just giving war more power. Okay. And basically the war is over. Okay. So the Croatians, we have to delete the capital region. Here, so the Rome, because we're doing like war score. So Rome gets the most. They get the most valuable provinces. Here, so basically the borders will basically follow down here because they want all the Mediterranean. That's what they invaded him. The Greeks will get basically Serbia and Macedonia and stuff. And basically the Croatians are now the Poles also get some land, and the Croatians they'll kind of just pushed up here. The Croatian government dissolves as well, and basically this is now what region would this be? So we have Croatia up here, we have Hungary. How was called? What's this called? Nostrovania. Nostrovania is formed. Is this country right here? Nostrovania, not Transylvania, not to confuse with Transylvania. They just exist now. They will say this is the northern state, Nostrovania, and Croatia no longer exists. Kind of like Anatolia. So this is basically just a very, very huge series. Not very much exploring, but a rise of empires. Okay. The Romans know they can't really take on the Greeks. Okay, the Greeks they can defend their positions very well, unlike the Croatians. Okay, they're the number 3 power in the world. However, Croatia was the number 5 power, and that's the scale of Rome because they can't really invade Greece, which means we might be entering a kind of a cold war between Egypt, Greece, and Rome. Considering the fact that Egypt is a power, they basically have to wait until whatever country collapses first, as well. Meanwhile, the Swedes, they start to expand their borders towards here. Nothing really major. They just expand their borders here, and basically they just control this part of Sweden here. Then these countries are two very similar colors. So we're gonna use a different color for Poland. We're gonna use a red color for Poland now. I like that color way more. It also fits the country way more because it's Poland. Also, Poland will expand its borders eastward, and they expand the borders eastward. Poland is not a threat, and also Poland starts to explore more of like Ukraine as well. The more of the borderlands here, along with the Estonian nation, but they don't really settle because they expanded very quickly. However, they don't want to expand that quickly, so basically they'll extend the borders further west. Not west, east. West is USA. But they spend the borders for east, but they don't really have a lot of resources in mind. They just annexed some land. So Poland, they're actually rising up in the power rankings. They might actually become an important country in the future. But right now, it's the antiquity civilizations as well. Greece also wants a pie of the Africa colonies here, which is going to suck for Rome because guess what? You know what they're going to do? They're going to take over this land here, which is Libya, and colonize it as Greek. Meanwhile, Egypt, they're going to take the rest of northern Egypt, and that's it. Yeah, and yeah, they take over, and also they discover Cyprus exists, and they colonize that too. Uh, I don't want to people like, oh, what about Cyprus? You keep forgetting about Cyprus. So there you go, Cyprus is done too, as well. And yeah, there we go. We have our multipolar world at the very beginning. Also, we have Spain, which is a minor power, but we have three great powers, and they're basically it's a stalemate because all three of them have very strong militaries, similar populations. Egypt, I think, had the most people, around 6 million people, which isn't a lot of people, but for ancient era civilization, it is as well. Greece also has a similar as a smallest population, that's 4.9 million, and Rome has 5.7 million. But Greece has the least population, but they also have the least amount of land. But they're the most defensible. Okay, Greece is very mountainous. Anatolia is mostly mountainous. It's very easy to defend Anatolia. So I think it's the easiest country I think that could be beaten is Egypt because most of the country is flat as well. You do have some defensible terrain up here, but most of Egypt is flat, which means Egypt is number one. Has number one navy. That's basically what they're investing into most is navy. Army. Greece is investing most in the army, and Rome is investing most in the economy. So let's see which one will win at the end: navy, economy, which is Rome. Which the economy is kind of like an investment. They'll invest into the economy. The bigger the economy, the more tech. They're investing into technology, basically. Technology, how versus just army size versus the navy. Which again, they're taking into navy, army, like very similar to Sparta, and also they have a very defensible terrain as well. Also, the most technologically advanced country right here is Rome. At this current moment, this Roman country right here, they're the most technologically superior country in the world. And yep, that's about this video here. Goodbye.